Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at 3D coordinates. So we've looked at 2D coordinates, where we've got the x-axis and the y-axis. Now we're going to look at 3D coordinates, where we've got the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. And each one of these axes is perpendicular to each other, so they're 90 degrees to each other. So whenever we're dealing with coordinates in 3 dimensions, they'll be in the form x, y, z. So we go along the x-axis, then we would go up the y-axis, and then we would come out the z-axis direction. So for instance, if I had the point with coordinates 3, 1, 5, that would mean we'd go 3 along the x-axis, 1 up the y-axis direction, and then 5 out in the z-axis direction, and then we'd plot our point. So there are 3D coordinates. Now let's have a look at some typical questions. So here we've got a question. It says shown below is a cuboid. So we've got this cuboid, and obviously we've got the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis, and there's the origin, O. And so we've got this cuboid, and we've been asked to write down the coordinates of the vertex A. So if we have a look at this cuboid, vertex A is here. So let's have a look at the points we've been given. We've been given B is 14, 0, 5, and we've got D is 0, 6, 0, and then we want to find the coordinates of this point here, A. So let's just write down the form that the coordinates are given in. They're given in X, Y, Z. So if we have a look at this point D, it's in the form X, Y, Z. So that means the X coordinate is 0, the Y coordinate is 6, and the Z coordinate is 0. So we have a look at this point D. We're going 0 along the X-axis. We're going 6 up the y-axis direction, and we're not coming out in the z-axis direction, so that's it. That's the point D. In terms of this point B here, again, x, y, and z, we're going 14 along in the x-axis direction. We're then going 0 up in the y-axis direction, so it's not going up, and then we're coming forward 5 in the z-axis direction. So that's the point 14, 0, 5. Okay, so in terms of the point A, if we have a look at this point, well, we're going to be going 14 along in the x-axis direction because it's here, it's in line with B, so it's going to be 14 along in the x-axis direction, so 14. And then it's not going up in the y-axis direction because it's on the x-axis, so it's not going up at all, so it's going to be 0. And it's not coming forward in the z-axis direction, so it's going to be 0 as well. So the coordinates of the point A would be 14, 0, 0. And that's it, that's the coordinates of the vertex A. Now, in terms of vertex E, this vertex here, well, we're going to be going 14 along in the x-axis direction because it's above A, so it's going to be 14 is its x-coordinate. In terms of the y-coordinate, it's going up 6 because it's in line with D, so it's going to be going up 6. And because it's here, it's not coming out in the z-axis direction, so it's going to be 0. So the coordinates of the vertex E will be 14, 6, 0. And that's it. Okay, next. We've now been asked to write down the coordinates of vertex C and the coordinates of vertex F, so these two vertices here. So let's have a look at vertex C to begin with. So in terms of the x-axis, well, we're not going out in the x-axis direction, so we're not going out in that direction, so it's going to be 0 to begin with. Now, we're not going up in the y-axis direction, so that's going to be 0 as well, but we are coming out in the z-axis direction, and it's in line with B, so we're going to be coming out 5, so it's going to be 5. So the coordinates of this point will be 0, 0, 5, so 0, 0, 5. Okay, next, write down the coordinates of vertex F, so the coordinates of this point here. Now this point here, well, we're going to be going 14 along in the x-axis direction. We're then going to be going 6 up in the y-axis direction, because it's in line with E, and then we're going to be coming out 5 in the z-axis direction. So the coordinates of vertex F will be 14, 6, 5, and that will be the point 14, 6, 5. And that's it, so we found the coordinates of vertices C and F. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. So our next question says, write down the coordinates at the midpoint of the line segment DE. So we've got D and we've got E. So this is the line DE, and we want to find the coordinates of the midpoint. So let's put a little midpoint there. So we want to find the coordinates of that point there, the midpoint of it. I'm just going to call it M. So we want to find the coordinates of this point M, the midpoint of the line segment DE. Now previously, we found the coordinates of the point E. They were 14, 6, and 0. Now we want to find the coordinates of the midpoint of this line. So to find the coordinates of the midpoint of a line, remember we add the coordinates together and then we divide by 2. There is a formula, it's this, it's x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then we've got y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And then we've got z1 plus z2 divided by 2. And that's the same as the two-dimensional version, apart from obviously we then got the z coordinate as well. So we're adding together the x coordinates and then dividing by 2. Then we're going to add together the y coordinates and divide by 2. And then we're going to add together the z coordinates and divide by 2. And some people remember that formula and some people just add them together and half it. Okay, so if we want to find the midpoint of these points, let's do that. So let's add together the x coordinates and half it. So 0 plus 14. So 0 plus 14 is equal to 14. Divided by 2 would be 7. So it's going to be 7. Next, the y-coordinate, well, it's 6 and 6, well, 6 plus 6, and then divided by 2 would be 6, so that's going to be 6. And then in terms of the z-coordinate, 0 plus 0, the z coordinate plus the z coordinate is equal to 0, divided by 2 is 0. So that means the coordinates to this point n would be 7, 6, 0. And actually that makes sense, because if you think about it, for this point here, we've gone 14 along and 6 up, and then 0 out. So in terms of this point, you'd go 7 along, 6 up, and 0 out. So that's the coordinates to that point. And again, some people remember this formula in terms of x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, and z1 plus z2 divided by 2. Or I would just add these together. 0 plus 14 is equal to 14, and half it is 7. 6 plus 6 is equal to 12, and half it is 6. And 0 plus 0 is 0, divided by 2 is 0. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our last part of this question. So we've got work out the coordinates of the midpoint of the line segment AG. So we want to find the midpoint of the line segment AG. So let's draw the line AG to begin with. So that's the line AG, and we want to find the coordinates of the midpoint. So we want to find the coordinates of that midpoint there. So I'm just going to call it N, because we've called the midpoint of that line M. So I'm going to call the midpoint of this line N. So we want to find the coordinates of this point N. So let's just write down the coordinates of A and G to begin with. Now we found the coordinates of point A to begin with. That was 14, 0, 0, because we've gone 14 along in the x-axis direction, 0 up in the y-axis direction, and 0 out in the z-axis direction. So it's 14, 0, 0. In terms of the point G, well, we haven't actually found that one yet, so let's find the coordinates of point G. Well, we're not going out in the x-axis direction, so it's going to be 0 to begin with. And then we are going up 6, so then it'll be 6. And then we're coming forward 5 in the z-axis direction, so that'll be 5. So the coordinates of the point G would be 0, 6, 5. Now we want to find the coordinates of the midpoint, so we then just add the coordinates together and half it, and that would be the coordinates of the midpoint. So let's do that. So 14 plus 0 is 14, divided by 2 would be 7. Next, 6 plus 0 is equal to 6, divided by 2 would be 3. And then finally, in terms of the z coordinates, 5 plus 0 is 5, divided by 2 would be 2.5. So the coordinates of this point N would be 7, 3, 2.5. And that's it. So we just found those two coordinates, we added them together and halved it, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at one more question. So this time we've got a cuboid, and we've been given the coordinates of 4 of the vertices of this cuboid. We've been given the coordinates 0, 0, 0, so this point here, 3, 0, 0, so 3 along the x-axis direction, 0, 0, so that's this one, 0, 11, 0, so that's going to be 0 along the x-axis direction, 11 up in the y-axis direction, and 0 out, so that's that point there, and 0, 0, 5, so it's going to be 0 along the x-axis direction, 0 up in the y-axis direction, and 5 out in the z-axis direction, so that's there. So we've got the coordinates of those points, and we've been asked to write down the coordinates of vertex A. So we want to write down the coordinates of this point here. So if we wanted to write down the coordinates of this point, remember it's in the form x, y, z. So we've got the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and the z coordinate. So in terms of the x coordinate, that's going to be 3, because we're going 3 along the x-axis direction, so 3. We're not going up in the y-axis direction, we're not going up this way, so it's going to be a 0. And then we're going out 5 in the z-axis direction, so it's going to be 5. So the coordinates of this point would be 3, 0, 5. Okay, next, write down the coordinates of vertex B. So we want to write down the coordinates of this point now. So that one was 3, 0, 5. Next, we've got the point B. Well, in terms of the z-axis, we're not going out in the z-axis direction, so that's going to be 0. So 0 to begin with. Then we are going up 11 in the y-axis direction, so 11. And then we are coming out 5 in the z-axis direction, so that's 5. So the coordinates of the point B, so the coordinates of vertex B would be 0, 11, 5. And that's it. And that's it. So in this video, we've looked at 3D coordinates. So we've got our x-axis, our y-axis, and our z-axis. And the points will be given in the form x, y, z. We've got our x coordinate, our y coordinate, and our z coordinate. And that's it. And I hope you found this video useful. Cheers.